Okay, so welcome back to another story time. This one is going to be about basically how I lived on a farm for 9 months. This farm was, let me think here, the farm was in, what do you call it? It was in over there in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, or whatever. Um, and that's like kind of country. There is a city to it, but I was more or less way out in like the city, not the city, the country, getting things. Welcome back to another story time. I'm going to be talking about living on a farm for 9 months. I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and while I was in Jacksonville, Florida, I guess you could call this a concentration camp or behavioral facility or whatever you want to call it. It was a country, not country, welcome back to another story time. And so this one's going to be about how I lived on a farm for 9 months. I was out there in Jacksonville, Florida. I honestly don't remember my age. I could have been like anywhere from 16 to 15, somewhere in that bracket. I know that much. I had been dealing with this farm situation and stuff for a while. If you have heard about my video that I had on here about how I ended up in JV, there was also another time where I'm trying to remember and line this all up. It's a little bit fuzzy and everything for the most part. But when it really comes down to it, was that I know I ended up in JV well before. No, I was. Oh man, I'm trying to remember. When you really think about these things and you're trying to remember them in order, it gets pretty hazy because there was a guy or a police officer who was retired that was a part of the program, and he was talking about how he was telling my grandmother to do something better with, I guess, raising me or something. That he says, oh, I'm going to predict that, something's bad's going to happen and your kid's going to end up in jail and you're not going to have any control over it and this and that. And then he's going to have a life of crime and all this bullshit, a bunch of fear mongering for the most part. So that's why when I'm trying to think about this stuff is I'm trying to remember if did I end up in JV like after he had said that or before. I honestly am trying to honestly really remember, because when I ended up in JV, like that was like definitely around the time of when Pokemon X and Y had come out. Basically, I know that much because I had seen the commercial for it. So I'm going to be doing some mini research here while I'm talking about my story here. So for the most part, when I was experiencing this, this is where you really get to the point where um, yeah, okay, so Pokemon X and Y was definitely when I was in jail. So I mean, I'm just trying to remember this stuff. Um, hmm. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so if I was dealing with that around that time, then I'm trying to think about knowing what else happened here, basically, that I can remember from because when it comes down to this and going through the motions of thinking about all this stuff, like this retired like police officer guy was a complete freaking asshole all the time. So like he basically, I think he had either predicted that I was gonna end up in jail or whatever. I mean, if you've heard anything about the JV story, I mean, it was honestly where my dad was just a complete asshole, and he always has been. So when it really comes down to it, I'm gonna have to go with the fact that probably this police officer predicted that I would have been in JV. but I don't know because I didn't end up in being in Camp Consequence, which is what the farm is called. Basically, before I was 10 or 9, like I know that much. Like I wasn't like a crazy small little kid being in JV. I honestly don't know. I'm trying to still think about all of this honestly. But the experience about being on this farm was you basically have no contact with your parents. It's really a surreal experience because you're on anywhere from 2 to maybe 4 acres of land. Basically, you have woods, all that type of stuff. You have like a mobile home and like a, you know, type of living. I mean, they got jumpsuits, you got this, that, everything. Whenever other kids were basically acting up and this and that and whatever, they would host events there and do weekends there and stuff like that and have like lockdown and, they have like legit tents and just everything. It was some pretty honestly crazy stuff for the most part. They just every single time a kid was in public school and he came there for this or that, he would end up doing homeschooling and on the computer, like schooling type of stuff or whatever. So schooling wasn't a big deal anyways. You just do FLVS basically, like virtual school. And then they had like basically like 20 laptops for the most part. And so I think we're dealing with a small group of kids, probably 15 and under, of the amount of kids that were there. You had two, you had like two main like you had like two main like duos of these wardens that were just super best long friends and whatever. So like one was like Randy and the other one was like Travis. Randy was a fat dude, and he had a condition that he couldn't ever lose weight or some bullshit. He had a house on the acre of land. There was like wide open fields and stuff. Somebody else owned horses there. We had cows, all that crazy stuff. There was like all that typical stuff. We were planting crops. It was some pretty crazy stuff for the most part. We had chickens, roosters, everything, cages, the whole 9 yards of a farm was all there basically. We had like typical chores and this and that. We would pick up twigs and there was just like literally like 90 trees all around us, like just tons of trees, tons of cameras. The whole entire place was just there wasn't one camera where if you're gonna go and do something, like you wouldn't have no access to then going and see any of that. So the only place where there wasn't cameras was the bathroom, but basically everywhere there was definitely there was always definitely like cameras just everywhere. So there wouldn't be any type of escape, obviously. When it really comes down to it, the kids, and like, the kids that were there that, the parents paid like, thousands of dollars for them to be on this farm, basically, for the most part. No electronics except for the laptops, just for, no electronics except for like laptops, just for school, and that was about it. The meals and this and that and everything else like that. There's like a whole point system. Oh my god, the point system was ass basically, but when it really came down to it, they would run off of having they would run off just having like just going to a food bank and getting food for free. So like, or minimal cost too. They would do things like that basically. I'm trying to think here still. There would be a lot of things where there would be times where if a few people acted up bad, then everybody else would have to then suffer the same bullshit, basically. So let's say for an example, if a few kids didn't wake up early or nothing on time to then go and get breakfast, for an example, and you didn't wake up in time to get breakfast or whatever, then that would make everybody else suffer too, and then they also too wouldn't get breakfast either, and stuff like that, and just a whole bunch of bullshit, bro. It was just like legit, just retarded ass, like BS, bro. Whenever you got mail, it was always going to be opened ahead of time, and you wouldn't be able to check your mail before you could get it or nothing. So the address would go to the owner's, which his name is Glenn. Oh my god, I hate that guy. Just complete asshole for the most part. He wouldn't be on property, but he was like the main dude that made the whole entire program. So he would just drive there every single. He would just drive there every single day. He wouldn't stay on property, but he would be watching you through. He would be watching you through the cameras and stuff like that. I do know that I know that one of the phones that was really big that the owner had was like an HTC like Evo or something, one of those phones. So that was definitely a phone that was popular around that time. Man, that was around 2010. Damn. So I don't know. I must be tripping. It must have been 1 or 2 years around the time when that phone was around. Definitely, I know that much. But yeah. So he would be able to watch us through his phone and all that type of stuff, and whatever. So he could go in and like remote call in and stuff and talk to and say things or whatever, or he could go and call somebody up and say, yo, this just happened, boom, go do with that or whatever. Like half the time, if he didn't show up for that day, that he was there in presence watching through the camera and whatever. It was pretty crazy. There wasn't a kitchen, so they did the kitchen through like a mobile type of kitchen trailer thing and whatever. So stuff like that. There would be consequences in a sense where if you messed up for the week or whatever, basically, you might get a punishment for the next 3 days of instead of being able to have hot showers for a few minutes or whatever, you would also too then have to go and deal with then going to have cold showers, stuff like that. Really got bored of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Oh my god, that was complete like. Oh my god, that was just like eating the worst amount of food ever put together. You wouldn't ever know what bread they used, but you'd always have peanut butter and jelly. That was honestly, that was like the worst food combination ever. I got so burnt out over it. Um, it was honestly pretty crazy for the most part. I'm trying to remember some other things. There definitely was tent life. You'd have to deal with things. If you couldn't get your shit together, then you would have to sleep out on the porch or whatever you'd have to deal with. The only thing when they wouldn't not deal with crazy things was if it got too cold to be outside or whatever the case may be. There would be times where we'll let something pass or we'll be nice to you, and yes, you did mess up and this will be on your record, but whatever, like in a record sense of them to look back on it that, oh, you want something nice, oh well, look it back 3 weeks ago when you messed up, so we're not gonna give you that second chance just because now you think that you're doing good. Like they would just do crazy shit. They would just completely just F with your head and whatever. It was complete craziness. The Travis guy lived in like a camper on the property and whatever. Things like that. A lot of these people that were managing the place, definitely the head owner guy, Glenn or whatever, he had been in the military and the football and all that stuff and whole bunch of crazy shit. So all he did was run off of coffee and he always woke up at 5 a.m. right on the dot every single morning, and you're just like, oh fuck. um, so that's just like the actual like farm life part of that and stuff. There would be times where the third Friday of every month they would do like a weekend type ordeal where every third Friday of the month, we would do like this weekend thing. So you have 3 days of basically revitalization. This is in a different part of some other place that we were at. And so you would basically be dealing with anywhere from something dealing with the idea of you're going to be dealing with the first day, which is Friday night, I think it is. If for the most part, you first get there, everybody settles in, everybody's like, oh, fuck. You basically get there at like 12 p.m. You get there at 12 p.m. Everybody just is like, oh shit. Glenn comes, yells in your face, whatever, a whole bunch of crazy bullshit. Um, I don't know. There's a few different location changes all throughout the program and the many months that I was there. I even did work at a cemetery with relaying sod grass and a whole bunch of crazy shit. It was a really crazy experience. The Friday night when you first get there on that third Friday of the month, you would have like literally probably 20 police officers, like at least 5 of them just yelling in your face, with a bunch of other of them, going and pointing out their taser guns, not shooting them necessarily unless things really got out of control, but they would just have some of the other officers would have their tasers ready. You got a gate around the whole entire perimeter. Glenn, I feel on purpose, found something where there was fire ants. So you would also have to you would have to be on your back with your feet up in the air and stuff. And then you would have to hold it there until you're like, oh, if you put your feet down and you just laid flat, they'd be like, I want those feet up or whatever. And they would just yell in your face. And then they would be like, stand up. And then whatever parent problem that you were there for, you would get yelled at. And why'd you do this or why'd you do that or whatever. So, let's say for an example, if you were a kid and you went and killed a hamster and microwaved it, or you broke somebody's iPhone or whatever your parent just didn't approve of that was super irritating or whatever that they didn't like or whatever, then you'd be there for that thing and problem and whatever. My grandmother, the thing that she sent me there for the very first time I ever got exposed to this whole entire program basically was that I was gonna be I had broken like the little paper flap to her borderless printer that at the time was, I'm gonna say, like a $200-$300 printer, honestly. And honestly, she could have just gone and gotten a brand new freaking printer at this point. I mean, she has so much money, so I don't know what the whole big deal was. But for the most part, she wasn't having it or whatever. So she, basically like tried to sedate me and whatever. And she did that multiple times. And she got like this melatonin type sleeping medicine and whatever. And then she went and used that to like, I think like carry me or this or that to then, go and put me in the car and drive all the way from Lutz to like wherever this is, and like the Jacksonville, Florida, like she would just want to do the whole thing and the whole operation and just knock me out and shit. And so then like it was just like I'd be waking up in the morning or the afternoon or whatever, just super tired. And then like the first time I got up out of the car and I had Glenn yelling in my face, and he was like, "Did you just wake up or whatever?" And I'm like, "No." And he was like, "Did you just say no without ending it in sir? Here we say sir and yes ma'am and all this shit." I'm like, get the fuck out of my face. Like, Jesus fuck, just fucking blew my ears off over, like whatever. And so like it was just retarded, like how stupid ass this program was, I swear to God. But for the most part, it was really pretty crazy. Um, I don't know. It was just like this whole entire experience of the camp was just insanity. Like when you're dealing with these weekend programs or whatever that they would do, the whole idea of everything is to that if you ever get the chance, or they feel that you've changed in some dramatic way, then sure, you get to go home or whatever and stuff like that. And so basically Glenn had this whole like guarantee of, oh, if you didn't like if your kid didn't change during that weekend and they still went home, and then after then going and dealing with that, and then going and you know then going and then still having problems, then you would be right back there again for the same price, no cost or whatever put on whatever. He'll just pay your parent like $200 for gas or whatever. You just get him there or whatever, or Glenn will even come and pick you up and take care of you and whatever. And I'm just like, holy fuck, it's so crazy. So basically they also have like this thing with helpers and whatever. I don't know, some of the kids that were there were just complete like cum dump. Basically they were like just the most retarded ass stupid freaking kids that just would end up in this program. Like they were fucking brain dead kids that just wouldn't listen to their mothers, that would just end up in this program. And I'm like, how the fuck did you reproduce this fucking pile of trash? Like, it was crazy, bro. There was this kid that I don't know why the fuck he did it, but I don't know, some of these kids too, even just, they fucking do these crazy things because they fucking hate their parents. Like, but then also too, on the other side, sometimes their parents are just like, shit, bro, like they want their kid to just chill out and saying like, yo, it's really fucking hard, bro. And you not wanting to like, help out around here is like tough. And he's like, I'm at work all the time, and you think it's okay to just go fuck off, or, not go to school or this or that. I can't have that. Like, I can't just be, coming to your rescue all the time. Who's going to pay the fucking bills? You? It was like be all that crazy bullshit talk and whatever. And I'm just like, holy fuck, this is just some retarded ass stuff, honestly. Um, it was some really crazy stuff, honestly. So when it really came down to it, a lot of this stuff was just honestly like just the most simplest stuff that their kids would come there for. There would be some kids that would just straight up run away from their parents, and these kids would just not agree with their parents, but they had friends on the outside that would just be like, oh yeah, come and stay at my place, we'll just deck you out and treat you right and whatever, and yeah, fuck your parents or whatever. But then their own parents are like worried, and are you safe, this and that and whatever, like however. And so then they would end up in the program, and they would be like A star, A's all across the board just on having good grades and everything. And they would end up in the program just because they just hated their parents and they weren't going to lash out, but they would just run away. But then they would go end up in the program, and I'm like, wow. Holy shit. So there'd be things like that basically. um Honestly, it was pretty crazy. Honestly, from the beginning, when I was there at the very beginning of the program, and then transitioning to the farm and whatever else, they didn't really work with girls necessarily. They had like a different division for that completely, and they would resolve that in a different way. But for the most part, um, mostly the farm was just only males, honestly. But then eventually they just got like, and they went and then got another trailer set up and whatever. And then this trailer was just your typical, like, if you were loading up lawnmowers or transporting a car or something type of setup. So it wasn't even like a proper trailer park or nothing. And it was just filled with bunks. And then all they went and did was just they just used like the house for the most part for the part of it. So where Randy was, they'd be dealing with all the females and whatever basically. So it was pretty crazy. Glenn always added on other things to do and whatever. And so eventually we ended up with dealing with the rats, not rats, rabbits basically. And so with the rabbits basically, we ended up having to take care of them and whatever. But I swear to God, this was so freaking hilarious and epic. Some other kid got blamed for me. Like, I went and messed up the rabbits, and I kept the rabbits out of their cages and stuff. And so I basically what happened was the rabbits weren't put away properly or whatever, and so it was like nighttime or whatever when we were doing it. It was like our chore or whatever that we were going to go and do and finish up and complete doing for the day. And so it wasn't even me who was working with the rabbits that was assigned to do it. I was just hanging around with another kid that was doing whatever. And so for me, I ended up letting the rabbits basically fuck all night, basically, without nobody knowing. And so basically, I was supposed to be the one that I went and, was supposed to put them back and whatever, and I didn't. And so then I guess another kid got blamed for it or whatever. I don't know. But nobody knew what happened. But the rabbits had their separate different cages and whatever. And I don't know, it was honestly a little bit funny because then it ended up with having to make it so that Glenn then would have to separate the offspring of the rabbits after every 2 weeks to then have to now then go and sell the rabbits basically. And he didn't want to have to deal with having to also have to run a farm and then have to go and sell rabbits too. It was pretty funny. So yeah, I didn't get blamed for any of that shit. I just saw the consequences of those rabbits have to then like the guy was just Glenn was just basically, well, fuck, now they're fucking, then shit, I'm not going to get in the way of that now having to stop, because we wanted them to be separate. We wanted them to not have the chance to basically fuck each other. So I mean, we kept that under wraps for like the first 3 weeks for the most part, but after a while it just kind of got to a point of just falling apart, and it was kind of crazy. So I don't know, I kind of felt like I'm like wait, didn't I take care of these rabbits to put them back together? And I'm like contemplating, and then I'm like, well, fuck, I must have been drunk. I wasn't drunk or nothing, honestly, but just having to deal with that was just kind of a little bit funny. The only really decent drink that we really had to deal with and have to have was water. Other than that, we would get lucky if we got to have Gatorade or whatever. Definitely. Their whole idea was if you ask, you can't get in trouble, and then if you don't ask, then you would get in trouble. So I don't know. They had like some silly rule with that and stuff basically. And then like everything that you learned from the farm, you're supposed to then go and be able to then have and use as a toolkit for when you get home. So like the whole no sir, yes sir, like madam, ma'am, whatever other type of bullshit was supposed to like happen basically for the most part. Then for some of the kids too had decently heightened privileges too, where they got to get themselves to work up to a they got to have like a more of a helper-esque type ordeal where they get to have like this extra like what do you want to call it, like this extra like ability to have I'm not gonna say pleasure, but more of a heightened status of being able to have like a status over other people, so they can be like a mini warden for a little bit. So if the warden needs to go do other things, it's like, okay, you keep doing that, Timmy, and then Timmy looks over everybody else basically. And so that's kind of how that would go. And Timmy would be the type of person where he would just be cool to everybody anyways, and would be pretty tough about being strict on things anyways and things like that. So that would be pretty chill for everybody. So that was pretty chill. There would be times where they would do silly competitions that would be like little tests basically, where if you would have like a stupid ass test where you would have to deal with, honestly, this is the most stupidest shit ever I'd ever have to fucking deal with ever again. I had to transport a gallon of water from one barrel to another, and I'm just like, the fuck do I have to deal with this? And I was given a cup with 2 holes in it, and I had to fully fill up the cup, use my hand at the bottom, use my hand at the bottom to plug the 2 holes the best I can, and then like this is basically a paper cup basically that is honestly pretty small already, and then go and use that to put into the other one. And I'm like, oh my fucking god, this is so stupid. And so I would only do a bit of it, and I'd just be like, fuck this shit. And I would just go and just take the whole fucking water gallon bucket, and I'll just dump it into the other one. I'm like, done. And then they would go back and look at the cameras and be like, oh yeah, no, go do it again. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? And they'd be like, yep. And I'm like, why? I did it. I did the task. And I'm like, oh my god. So whatever. It was just a bunch of bullshit half the time. There would be another time where once you got down to a point where there would get to be a point where one time we had to deal with basically we at one point there was a time where some of the other kids were messing up and stuff and whatever, and so then like I told a little bit before, where once a few other people start fucking up, then it basically affects everybody else too to then go and get fucked up too and have to have the same bullshit consequence. So let's say for an example, a kid let's say for an example, doesn't do something that he's told to do or whatever, then for the whole freaking weekend, you would get a weekend type experience where you wouldn't have police yelling at you, obviously, but for the next 3 nights, you're gonna have this guy on a 4x4. You would have like at least two people on a 4x4 and with lights and whatever, and you would be basically running around in a circle around a couple of different trees, basically in a certain predetermined path and stuff. And I'm like, are you freaking serious? And you'd basically be doing this for basically 3 hours. And I'm like, oh my God, you got to be freaking retarded. And then some of the other kids, after probably doing the 3 hour thing, would then go and be like, oh, I'm not tired yet. I want to keep running. And I'm like, then everybody else had to go and run. And I'm like, are you fucking retarded? Oh my God, it was just crazy shit. There would be times where there would be things that would improve over time. So inside of this mobile home type of like thing where the farm was on, where everybody did all of their work and stuff and things like that, we used to have like carpet on the floor and stuff. And so then after going and then there being carpet on the floor for a long period, it wasn't also even just having like cameras. There was also microphones and just everything for surveillance basically. And so with that happening, the carpet would damper some of the things that were somebody whispering something basically. And so they ended up taking out all of the carpet and everything. And so what they did was, for us, they put everybody in the tents just for no apparent reason, just punished everybody just for punishing them for some sake of nobody knowing why. And then literally in 3 days, they replaced all of the carpet in the whole entire place, all with tile. And then everybody is just like, what the fuck? What was the whole idea? What the fuck was wrong with carpet? And then it came upon to us in the next 2 days that, oh, now with tile, there's an echo, and then now they can hear better with the microphones. So it's like, Jesus fuck. And it's just like with the whispering, this and that, whatever else. So it was pretty retarded. And then they ended up changing out the walls for egg cartons and stuff too. And so then you could hear really well with the noise bouncing off the floor, and then it being dampened, not being as bad, or something on the microphones too, and whatever. I don't know. It was some crazy BS. And then they ended up going and adding even more microphones, which, I mean, you would think that having 3 microphones is enough, and then they ended up adding like 7 of them, and it's just like, holy shit. I mean, that's just retarded. That's just going AWOL, basically. So it just got insanity. So basically, for an example, there would be times where we would be playing basketball, for an example, and maybe some kid has some bright idea. Oh yeah, let's just go have our recreation, and while the wardens are distracted, and we got something good to do for a little bit, for playing some basketball, even though not everybody was good at sports. One of the kids would get the bright freaking idea, because there was no fence or nothing or whatever. They ended up going with the idea of, oh, there's all this woods around us. Oh, fuck it. I'm just gonna, try to sneak the fuck out and whatever. And there was like a kid that ran literally 2 miles away, and we were just playing basketball and whatever. And so then we lost the privilege to completely just never play basketball ever again, because somebody got the bright idea without then going and having supervision. Now you got to deal with, having to now have, no basketball privileges. And it's just like, oh my freaking God, or whatever. It's just like one freaking kid just goes and fucks it up for everybody else. And so this kid, he ended up just getting rubber bulleted or whatever. And so he ended up they ended up getting him so well, like they just shot him in like one of the legs and then his back or whatever, and he basically fell down to the ground. And then they just picked him up on the 4x4, and then they just carted him back. He basically got like 2 weeks worth of bullshit just because of him having to deal with what he had to deal with. And basically, once you get into a jumpsuit, that's just like straight up like having to deal with, PB&Js only, sleep outside with the mosquitoes and shit. Then you'd have to go and then deal with, you would eat separately from everybody else. Your food would be made after everybody else, then going and having stuff and whatever. I don't know. It was so freaking retarded. I swear to God. It was like, honestly, like the worst experience ever. It was just some really crazy stuff. And basically, for the most part, there was a point where if your parent paid for a certain amount of determined time, let's say it could be anywhere from 3, 6, 8 months, 9 months, whatever your parent paid for, and let's say you tried to fake that your colon was failing and you were pooping kidney stones or whatever the fuck was going on with you and hurting or something, and you were able to fake it well enough that you went to the hospital, then your time paused would, if you lost your time of you in the hospital for a month or something, then that month wouldn't count towards you being there or nothing. So then you'd come back a month later and you would be there basically a month longer because you thought that, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go get out and fake some bullshit and whatever, stuff like that. I mean, some kids would do some honestly crazy stuff, and for the most part, I mean, obviously, no video games, none of that, because let's say, for an example, there's this whole idea where if there was any sort of creature comfort, then you would just be back there more and more and more and think it's just so good and be normalized with it that, yes, you got all these other problems and consequences, but just because of that one good thing, you would think that, oh yeah, I mean, I'll just go fuck up on purpose and then be in pain and then feel good. And then, there can get to be a point where the body can just be like totally okay with it, and then it just feels like nothing to some degree. So then he just outright, just water, just, the basics, if we got lucky on Sundays, we would, at least get to have movies or something. We would at least get to have movie votes. If there was a tie, there would be absolutely no movies at all. Stuff like that. You couldn't have long showers. If let's say, for an example, I think every single day we got to have showers basically. But if we took too long on the showers, then basically not everybody else got to have showers either. You then got to have just strictly cold showers. I don't know. It was some crazy stuff, bro. It was honestly some really straight up retarded stuff. Randy's kid got legit straight up special treatment all the time with everything. Like, he had a shiny phone, he would talk bullshit all the time and not really have to deal with consequences half the time. He literally sucked ass when it came to judgment on anything. He would lie, he would say stupid things, and the wardens would believe him. Oh my God, it was just, why don't you just give up the whole entire farm to a little freaking baby, bro? And then make this baby say, jump high. And then if you didn't jump high enough, and the baby felt a certain way towards you, then, Hitler all over again, you're dead, basically, type of power. Like, frick, it was just retarded, honestly. So I don't know. There'd just be crazy, stupid stuff like that. He would get away with some crazy stuff, honestly. I mean, he could literally do anything he wanted to. Like, he wasn't like somebody that was associated to the farm or nothing. It was just like crazy stuff. So basically, when you're the son of the warden and your kid gets to basically do whatever he wants. It was just retarded stuff, and then people would write up stuff and things like that to Glenn, and Glenn would be like, "Oh, it's Randy's kid. Randy kids. I give full control to let him do whatever he wants. There's nothing that you can do." And I'm just like, you fucking serious? Like, even when this person lies, go fucking look at the stupid camera footage. And then, like, they basically would be like, "Oh, we don't have that," because the freaking kid was so smart that he was able to go in on the cameras and then go and scrub out the cameras, and he would like do things where their infrastructure was such bullshit that if you just start up a microwave near the local part of where the server is, like the Wi-Fi, all the cameras were all on Wi-Fi and repeaters and stuff. And so if you wanted to go and do some stupid shit, all you would have to do is set the microwave for 20 minutes basically, and he would basically then go and have 20 minutes to just basically nuke the Wi-Fi and completely make it so that then he could just go and do whatever else. Like, it was just the most stupidest stuff because they put the freaking microwave right next to the router, and so every single time you'd run the microwave, the whole internet would go out, and I'm just like, this is just retarded. So it was just some crazy stuff, honestly. The teacher that they would have come basically every day from Monday to Friday, his name was like Mr. Dickinson or whatever. I don't know. He was really decently cool and stuff. He basically had done a lot of crazy, awesome stuff for the most part. If you really got really cool and chill with him, he would be really cool with you and stuff like that. And you did really good on your grades and whatever else, this and that. He was pretty dope. Um, he was pretty straightforward with stuff and whatever. Um, there was a time where at one point I was trying to get help with like a tutor, and for them to go and apply and then get help and this and that, they would have a tutor that would then go and come and whatever else like that. Other kids were able to get tutors faster than some other kids were able to, or something for some reason. It took like 3 months just to get the funding for me to be able to have a tutor, and then by the time I then finally left, I just didn't have a tutor. I was at least at the farm at least 2 different times for a certain number of periods. So it was honestly pretty crazy for the most part. Um, I didn't like how my mother would be driving and stuff like that, and it would be probably like she would always do it around the time of the end of the year in a certain fashion, and so with that she would say, "Oh yeah, let's go to Atlanta," and I'd be like, "Okay, cool, let's go to Atlanta," and I'm thinking in my head like, shit, did I fuck up? Did I do anything stupid? Whatever. I didn't know where I was at with my program assessment with her. It's not half the time. She didn't ever tell me any of the things or nothing half the time. So she wouldn't ever I wouldn't ever know if I would have fucked up badly enough where she could then just go and send me to the farm or whatever for a reduced rate and whatever half the time. So I felt like sometimes that I really had to be on my toes and just be like, oh my God, I'd had to be reading the signs and stuff, and Google Maps I think was a thing. I really don't know. She would one time we were at a gas station for a day or two almost, and I'm kind of oh shit, why do we at this gas station for so long? I was just half paranoid, oh my God, what happens if Glenn shows up? Because Glenn basically has a policy where, basically, if your kid acting up, I will come fly to you, or I will come to you and I will drive the 6 hours to come to you, whatever the freaking problem is. It don't matter if you're in Miami. It doesn't matter if you're in New York. He'll find a way to come get you, and he will literally basically come after your ass. So it was some pretty crazy shit like that. So really experiencing a lot of this stuff was pretty freaking crazy. Um, So yeah, I mean, and then also too relating back to the whole weekend type stuff that would happen, with the whole like police yelling in your face and the fire ants type of stuff. There would be you would definitely have some decent physical labor and stuff that would have to happen. One time for this whole entire weekend of stuff that had happened or whatever, the parents would be chilling out, having AC and this and that. We would be out in the hot heat and whatever, and we'd be living in the tents, whatever, all that type of crazy stuff. We eventually got to a point where there got to be a point where we literally like had to clear out a whole entire pond. We had to clear out a whole entire pond of like marshmallows, like type of whatever things that grow in ponds, like pomfroni type of whatever you would call them, type of things that would like marshes and stuff like that, type of things, whatever, like whatever you call it, like whatever grows in a pond that is just like an air seed that can just destroy ponds pretty easily and just overgrow them to not let water be in the middle of them. It was basically like an overgrown like trench type of pondy thing right next to a legit jail or whatever. So basically, with this and whatever, we spent like this whole weekend trying to clear out the whole thing. So we were dealing with some kids that were going and using like snake chops and whatever around their thing so they wouldn't get snake bitten or whatever while they're doing stuff, things like that. And so then also too, and there would be things where we would be dealing with the whole idea of I think the idea there was a time when you would have to be careful about the snakes. They'd be using weed eaters around the edge, cutting the grass, whole bunch of different type of stuff we were doing. We were having to go in and get our shoes completely fucked up and dirty, and like getting into like mud with our shoes that were nice and expensive, and oh my god, it was just crazy. And we really had to be on the outlook for snakes and water moccasin type of stuff and whatever. It was some pretty crazy shit. And so basically what some of the parents and some of the particular type of people that were specialized for this were having to go and basically like they were tasked with the idea of be on the outlook for these 15 kids and whatever that are see if they're slacking or if they're working hard or that or this or that or whatever. Honestly, I didn't get to go home right after the first thing, either because my didn't matter how hard I worked or my ethic or whatever it is, or there was some other turn of events that I didn't have in control of. I feel like there was a point where I didn't have control of it, but I don't know if it was rigged from the beginning. I couldn't tell you. I'm gonna probably say that my odds were put against me anyways because I don't know. I worked pretty freaking hard. I worked my freaking ass off, bro. Like my whole freaking body hurt, bro. I was about to like literally just basically turn into Hulk overnight. Like my whole body just was freaking sore from the walking, the running, like everything too. I mean, there was even a part of it where even when like let's say at one point I completely ended up like fucking up on some of the work. I didn't do something the right way. They were like, go over to you yonder or whatever they said, and go walk the perimeter and whatever. And I'm like, what the fuck did I do? And they're like, go walk the perimeter. And I had to go deal with this dumb asshole that would harass me on his go kart and whatever. And I'm like, well, yeah, what do you need? Keep walking. And I'm like, right, okay. And so I mean they just want to be assholes. I'd have to walk through these like thick weeds and shit that weren't cut or anything. So I had to like walk around the whole entire perimeter until everybody else was done and stuff. We're talking about like this being a whole entire Saturday, basically from the morning up until whatever. Like you're basically waking up right when like the dew is on the grass, basically at 5 a.m. and whatever. The whole idea is like emulating jail and stuff like that. It was pretty crazy. Sunday is a little bit of a Labor Day in the morning, but then once you get down to having to deal with like Sunday is pretty chill. You figure out your odds and chances of you going home or whatever the case may be or whatever happens. Whether or not if you're predetermined to go to the farm or not, that's however that happens. And it was honestly pretty crazy for the most part. Wasn't totally bad necessarily, but you would just have to don't know what your fate was ever. And so it was just honestly pretty crazy. Your parents would get tours of the jail and whatever. Um, there would get to be a point where if you were 16 years old or above or something like that, maybe 18, I think, I don't know, but they were basically giving out tours to this jail or whatever on the Sunday or whatever. I never got to experience or hear about any of this or any of that basically at all. I feel like either through like me going to JV, I got the tour of jail, or I don't know what it was. I forget for the most part, but some form or another, I did actually get like a legit tour of the jail. I don't remember, but I think I had to have been in JV to experience what the jail was at that point because you're basically in JV. It's just a juvenile, like you're a kid in jail, basically type of situation. So I think that they use that as an opportunity for you to look at what jail is. But the farm and the whole Camp Consequence scene gives your parents and they still divide them up because even when it comes down to jail, you only got males in one part and then females in another, and they don't ever interact with each other anyways in the most part or whatever, or they just have a completely different compound for the female and then a completely different compound for the male, whatever it is. They're just basically separated. So they would do two separate tours in that type of fashion and whatever too. So for the most part, that's literally for how all that came together and everything. It was honestly some pretty wild shit. Honestly, when it really comes down to it, oh man, I don't even know. I don't even think I shouldn't have dealt with any of that shit because I'm gonna go with the whole idea that it was my dad that was the freaking problem in my family, dude. I could get along with my grandmother just fine. It was just her having to deal with all this like real estate and this or that and everything else that I guess she felt as though everything was crazy when it wasn't really that bad when you really think about it. So it really got to a point where when you really deal and think about with any of it, it really honestly really wasn't that bad to really have deal with any of the things that she was really dealing with. I think she just had such a fear of a lot of decent amount of stuff that she just probably couldn't ever see the end of the light half the time. Even though she was like a friendly, awesome, good person, she just probably felt her ways about things and just wanted a clean cut solution to whatever. But when you really think about it, it's a bunch of bullshit, honestly. So yeah, that's kind of a lot of the stuff that I went through with this whole farm thing. It really was just a lot of bullshit, anyways, because it just shouldn't have to be something I had to go through. She just had to be, chill with stuff, like whatever. And the whole like, oh yeah, like the little piece at the end of my printer, broke off and whatever, and like, oh my god, bitch, get the fuck out of here. Just go fucking buy a new printer or like, get a tiny little replacement part. I mean, Oh my god, bro, that was some crazy bullshit. Honestly, just to go to a whole entire farm and camp for and whatever. Um, but yeah, this is honestly a good wrap up of everything for the most part. Um, like I don't think there's much else I could probably talk about that you probably couldn't just imagine, anyways. But it was a pretty surreal experience. It was honestly a lot of bullshit. It's something that they've been doing for um, ever since the beginning of time for this whole farm thing and whatever. Ever since this guy came together and thought up this whole idea of like this whole idea of just making kids act better is whatever. I mean, there would be kids that would be, crying on Facebook, and then all the parents would be laughing and talking about this or that and whatever, and it's crazy stupid shit. But pretty much, so that's basically the end of it. That's probably all I got to talk about. But honestly, it was some straight up freaking bullshit. I don't know what else to say, but it was one hell of a experience that I just shouldn't have had to have dealt with at all.